I am super excited today. In fact, I'm a little bit starstruck, a little bit in awe of the amazing guest we have for an interview today on this podcast. Life is not just about the destination, it's also about the journey. It's about being intentional on that journey and pursuing things like accretion. And I cannot think of a better person, a more qualified person to discuss these concepts with than my guest for today. World-renowned speaker, published author, fellow podcaster on The Expansive with John Sanay. It is a huge privilege to me to welcome to this podcast someone that has been an inspiration to me in my life.
You're listening to Intentionality with Paul Kemp.
Welcome to IWPK, Eric Kruger.
Paul, it's absolutely great to be with you. Thank you for the invite.
Eric, I'm super excited to have you here today. And I want to start off by asking you about your career, your journey through the world of work. And I'd love to hear from you. Do you have joy in what you do every day for a living?
I absolutely do. I'm very fortunate to love what I do, to find a lot of excitement in what I do, and also to have still a very steep mastery curve to what I do. So even though I've been in the speaking space for a long time, even though I've been in the coaching space for a long time, I feel like I'm still learning at an incredible rate. I feel like there's still so much that I need to get to. And so the challenge of it keeps it very interesting for me. The fact that I get to critically think about it every single day still keeps it interesting to me. Every day is a great challenge to figure out. And especially with the advent of AI, that we aren't sure where we are going and what the future is going to look like. So I'm loving every second of trying to navigate the unknown and helping people to navigate the unknown.
And you're doing an absolutely great job. Every single time I listen to you, I'm inspired to do better in terms of my podcast and the journey I'm having with this channel. One of the things that you mentioned that we could talk about today is a word that's very close to me. It's something I've spoken about probably 5 or 6 times already on the pod, and that's the word accretion. Aside from the word intentionality, I think accretion is probably my second favorite word, and that's why I use it a lot. Share some insights with us around your view on accretion.
I love hearing when other people talk about accretion. It's a word that I came across for the first time in about 2015. And the first big keynote that I ever gave was all about accretion. Accretion, and where it actually stems from is this quote that I saw from Edison that said, in the end, those who are successful will be those whose success was the result of steady accretion. And I looked at that quote and I went, I love this word accretion, but I have no really idea, like, what does it mean? So went to the dictionary, and accretion is essentially accumulation. But there's a few different contexts that it gets used in. And one context is that when you look into the stars, what you might find is there's a rock that floats in space. And over time, through accumulating other rocks onto it, it ends up going from a small rock to a bigger rock to eventually a planet or a star. And so I love this idea that accretion is, or we are accreting every single day. We are accumulating every single day. And we are accumulating thoughts, feelings, actions. And ultimately, one of the most fundamental human truths is that we are what we accumulate. And so once you realize that that is a fundamental truth, it really puts a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, because you have to be very mindful and very intentional with what you then accumulate. And it also means that the small things matter, that it's not about one thing, it's not about one small thing or one big thing, it's about the repetitive accumulation of these things that ultimately give you the life that you have or the business that you have. And so in some ways, it tells us that everything matters, but it also tells us that not just one thing matters. If you miss that workout today, it's fine. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. It kind of gives you permission to just treat yourself a bit more gently. But it also puts the ownership on you to say, accumulate, like gather, collect, collect the good things, collect the good actions, the behaviors, the right kind of decisions, the small changes, because ultimately, if you do that, it gets you to where you want to go. And accretion has become a worldview for me. There are a few ideas that I feel over time as I've spoken about them. Because sometimes you'll find an idea and it's trendy at the time, or it means something to you in the moment, but then that idea's time passes and you move on to the next thing. Accretion is one of those ideas for me that it's in my bones. Like it's a worldview that has been cemented for me. And I think about it all the time. And I still believe in the power of small action and small decisions and small changes. And I still advocate for it today. And it's still actually part of my talks today. And I'm still actually thinking about writing a small mini book that's just about accretion.
I love it. I love the idea of accretion. It's something that I fundamentally believe in my life. I like to think of accretion around habits. You mentioned behaviors, actions. For me, it's absolutely about habits. It's about thoughts and habits. But what I find in my life is you must be careful, because accretion can work for you or against you. If it's the accretion of bad habits, that accretion works against you. If it's the accretion or the accumulation of good habits, trying to do something on a more regular basis, more consistent basis, trying to be that 1% better every day, that's, I think, when the accretion starts working for you.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Accretion has no bias. It doesn't care. It's just a force of nature that accumulates. That's all it does. It's just this big accumulator of the things in your life. It doesn't care whether those things are good or bad. It'll just accumulate it and then give it back to you. And so it really is on you to think about what are you putting into the process of accretion.
Yeah. One of the questions I always ask my guests, because I really am interested in the answer, is around the question of what it is that you're passionate about in your life. If you get up in the mornings with a smile on your face, why is that? Is it because there's something special you're going to be doing that day that gives you joy? What is it that puts a smile on your face every day?
On the pod just before this, we were talking about the optimized versus the non-optimized life. And that in some ways we've fallen into this culture where it's all about optimization of every aspect of your life. How do you optimize your health and your relationships and your body and the way that you speak and the way that you write and the output you generate and the creativity? Like, it's just everything has to be optimized to the smallest amount, and if you don't do that, then you start falling or feeling like you're falling behind, or am I really tapping into my full potential? And for the past 2 or 3 years, I think I've experienced the opposite of that for the first time, because I've always been very brought into that idea is, how do I just like squeeze out the last bit of effort from every single thing that I do? And since moving to Cape Town, so I just post pandemic, or maybe still while we were sort of in it, like end of 2021-ish, we moved to Cape Town, and specifically Somerset West, so about 30 minutes outside of Cape Town. And I remember when my mom and them moved here for the very first time 10 or 15 years ago, I said to them, I'll never move there. It's like a old age home, essentially, like one big old age home.
Yeah.
And then, of course, somehow we've ended up here now. But since moving here, my life has been very different. I get to walk on the beach every single day with my dogs, whether that's like a midday quick pop out, or whether that's for sunset. We live 150 meters from the beach, so I quickly walk there with them. This afternoon, I'll go and play paddle at the paddle courts, but there's a real big community around the paddle. So it's like seeing all your friends, and you see them 3-4 times a week. I feel like I've engineered a life that I love. And because of that, I wake up in the morning with a smile. Not necessarily because I'm driven by extreme passion in anything that I do, although I am passionate about what I do. But it's just, I feel like in general, I've created a life that is a good balance between the optimized life. So because optimization also just means that there's intention behind it. But that intention can be warped when it becomes obsessive. because then it actually, I think we try and be intentional with life because we're trying to get somewhere, but we want to arrive there in a good state, mentally, physically, spiritually. But when intention is pushed too far, like any good thing, it can become destructive. It can become, and I think what intention becomes is obsession. And when we are obsessed about optimizing every single thing, then it leads to frustration. It leads to anxiety. It leads to unhappiness. And so I think where I've ended up is I've been able to create a life that's in between those two different worlds, where on the one hand, I'm really focused and intentional about improving the things that I want to improve. And on the other hand, I'm really prioritizing a calm nervous system, unhurried walks on the beach with my dogs, space to think. And I think because of that, because of being able to get that right for the first time in my life, I think I wake up in the mornings with a smile on my face. It's the accretion, the coming together of all these things kind of at the right time.
See, I knew this was going to happen. I wasn't 100% sure where it was going to happen or on what question it was going to happen. But I was convinced that I was going to hear a pearl of wisdom from you that could apply to anybody listening, but that certainly applies to my life. And right there, you've hit the nail on the head. I become obsessed about being intentional in my life, about that 1% better, about accretion, about everything being optimized in one's life. And I think sometimes you forget about the balance. You forget about just living and just enjoying your life. And I think that's such a valuable wisdom that you've shared with me today. So I really want to thank you for that. I think it's something that I need to remember during 2025 when I become so obsessive about optimizing everything in my life. Thank you for that, Eric.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I also am mindful that my experience is not everyone's experience, and that I'm not trying to build a billion rand company, you know. And if you were trying to build a billion rand company, I think you need that obsession. And so for some people, it's a requirement in order to achieve what they want to achieve. I think I've come to a place where I'm very clear on the life that I want to live. This is a difficult thing for us to get right, because when we think of the destination, there's this thing called mimetic desire, which says that we mimic the world around us and we mimic the people around us. And so we think about this destination, but actually this destination is so influenced by the things and the people around us that it's not actually ours. And then we start putting all these plans into action and we become quite obsessive about reaching this goal, only to realize at some point that this goal wasn't actually mine to begin with. And then you sit back and you reevaluate and you recalibrate and you go, okay, well, what do I really want? And perhaps it's not as big as I thought it is, or maybe it's not as extravagant as I initially thought, because this is more true to what I want to achieve. And to be very clear, like that it shouldn't come from a place of fear or a place of laziness. You shouldn't, because what I'm in a way saying here is that you might lower your goal a bit because you're not trying to achieve this big thing that was told to you by the world around you. You should achieve the mansions and the jets and whatever. You might lower your gaze slightly, and it's still a big goal to pursue, but you should never lower your gaze because of fear or because of thinking you can't achieve something, or because of laziness. It should purely be because you've become clear about what you really want. And so, for example, I'm just clear that I don't want to build a billion rand company. Okay, well, that gives me permission to not have to be as obsessive. I can think about what else do I want. And I remember when during COVID, I was running a program called Think Week. And Think Week was just 5 days of us thinking about our lives through different filters and lenses. And back then, and it's quite funny because when I think of it now, a lot of what I said back then has come to fruition today. So I said, I want to be speaking on stages across the world, earning in dollars, living in rands, all these types of things. And to me, it didn't feel grandiose. to lots of people on the call, it did. They were like, but I don't want to just be traveling internationally all the time, or I don't want to go through the effort of, finding clients internationally. And they were feeling almost inadequate because my goal isn't as big as your goal. But that's the trap that you need to avoid. It's not about your goal versus my goal. It's purely about the destination. And so all I'm trying to really say about that is, if your destination requires a bit of obsession for a certain amount of time, that might be the right thing for you for that moment of time. But if you are clear with yourself about what you are trying to achieve, and if you find that your obsessiveness and your over-optimization is actually affecting things that you care about, then I think it's really time to recalibrate.
I love the way you framed that. I want to put a slightly different perspective on it, and I'm bringing this from the industry that I'm in. I'm bringing this from a personal experience with clients. I think the big danger with over-optimization and obsession with a specific goal, like building a billion rand company or having a certain amount of wealth by the time you retire, the big danger there, and what I've seen personally, is where that journey is interrupted by things like illness or accident, where you have all these ideas of what it is you want to do one day to get joy in your life or bring joy in your life. And then unfortunately that journey is interrupted, and you're not able to do it anymore. And what does all that wealth or that billion rand company help you then? And I think the point for me is really about ensuring that it's not just about the destination, but the journey as well, and that you get the joy out of the journey to where you want to be one day.
Yeah, very well said.
I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the FFG Group of Companies. Take another step into living a more intentional life by being more intentional with your finances and insurance. As a trusted provider of a wide range of financial services, the FFG Group offers innovative, tailored solutions that help companies and individuals thrive and flourish. They are an amazing company that I believe in because they embody intentionality in everything they do, and I'm proud to partner with them. FFG is an authorized financial services provider. Ready to take the next step? Click the link below and start making better, more intentional financial decisions, or visit their website. Remember, with FFG, you create the memories, we ensure the journey.
Eric, this has been truly fantastic. I am really so happy to have had the opportunity to sit with you today and to hear some of the wisdom that you've shared with us. When I get to the end of an episode, I have this thing that I try and do, and I've done it now for more than 50 episodes, where I just try and leave the listeners and the viewers with like a recommendation or a tip of the week. Now, sometimes I use movies, sometimes it's books, sometimes it can be something completely different. Is there anything that maybe you can share in closing that could be a tip of the week or a recommendation from you?
Yeah, sure thing. One of my goals for the year is to be a bit better with books, because I think I love podcasts, obviously, and we find our content from so many different online sources these days, but I've kind of left books behind. And so this year I'm trying to get back into listening to more books and reading more books. And a book that I've been listening to recently that I think is a great recommendation, just because of the time we find ourselves in, is a book called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. And I love this book because the world is changing in very big ways around us, and it's going to require us to change in very big ways with it. And the thing that gets in the way of us changing is that we don't deal with endings. And of course, for new to emerge, something old has to end or die. And so the better we can become with saying goodbye to how things were, to how we were, the easier it becomes to move into a new future. And one of the toughest things that we have to say goodbye to is a certain identity that we might have had, or competence that we might have had, or an expertise we might have had. But if we can become good at letting those endings go and dealing with them in an emotionally mature way, then it opens us up for dealing and moving into a new world. So this book is great for helping you to think through those endings and maybe for you to change your relationship that you have with endings.
I love that. That's certainly going to go on my reading list. I'm an avid reader. I spend a lot of time reading, and I'm definitely going to make a point of reading that book in 2025. So thanks for sharing, Eric. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
I want to end off with something interesting and something that was very, very powerful for me. And that is that when you and I met during the coaching, we worked through a lot of things that I felt needed changing in my life. And I will never forget that you helped me in that time to come up with a mantra. Now, this is a mantra that you and I, decided on that was important at that time in my life. And even though it was many, many years ago, it's something that to this day I still practice. And it's something that I will never forget. And I just want to give you the credit for that. And I'm going to share my mantra with you. I'm going to be a bit vulnerable here today.
Yeah, please do.
So the mantra you helped me with all those years ago was less liked, more respected. And it's made a huge difference in my life. And I just wanted to thank you for that as well.
Can you quickly unpack that for a second? Less liked, more respected.
Yeah, it had to do at that time in my life with the fact that I was concerned that I was less effective and less successful because I had this obsession with people liking me, with being nice. And I was, in preparing for this interview with you today, I was reminded of that mantra, and I was so inspired by it again that I've decided that my next episode after today's interview is going to be on that topic. I'm going to specifically talk about that topic. But I was at a point in my life where I needed to worry less about people liking me, but I needed them to still respect me. And I've been working very hard on that over the last 7-8 years, and that was something very powerful for me.
Yeah. Listen, and just, props to you, because that really is what intentionality is about, is to be able to find a mantra like this and to really stick to it, and the fact that all these years later that it's still like rattling around in your head, it really shows the dedication that you bring to your own personal and professional development. Because I think people go through these kind of things all the time when they find the mantras and they find the affirmations, and then it just kind of fades away. And the fact that this is still sitting with you all these years later and you've dealt with it, I don't know to what extent you are still working on it. It just really shows your dedication to your own development. So really just hats off to you for that.
Thanks, Eric. I really appreciate it. This was absolutely awesome. I cannot wait to release this episode. You really have been an inspiration for me, and I will continue to follow your career and follow the expansive and everything that you do. Thanks for today.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Intentionality with Paul Kempf. Subscribe, like, and click that bell to get notified when we release more episodes on how to live a life of intention and